I don't think it's unfair to suggest yesterday was the government's worst day yet in dealing with the latest COVID mess. Not only do we know we don't know whether the cluster has started, we now have a new issue with the maintenance worker at the ISO facility, of course, and all the government can say is it's a bit tricky and it's a mystery. Minister in charge of Managed Isolation Facilities, Megan Woods, is with us. Good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
This new unconnected case, is this it, by the way? Do we have more coming today from Ridges or not?
Look, we don't know. We don't have the testing through. Of course, all the staff at Ridges were retested yesterday, so we'll see when the results come through today.
This is essentially about a government caught with their pants down yet again, isn't it? Sadly.
Look, absolutely not, Mike. What we're seeing here is that we have a system that has worked well by and large. Obviously, there is a case of a singular worker who has contracted the virus, and we're still trying to track down why. Because what we do know from the genetic sequencing is it's not connected to the cluster that's happening in Auckland at the moment. We could tell from the data there.
Means the border leaks, doesn't it?
Not at all. Look,
Megan. Let's start at the beginning. Let's just start at the beginning.
Yeah, let's start at the beginning.
It's either in the community or it's at the border. It's not in the community. Your government has said so. Therefore, it's at the border. Therefore, the border leaks.
Look, what I'm saying, Mike, is that a singular person contracting the virus, and we know that the close contacts at work have tested negative, is not the border leaking. Look, we can't even establish a person-to-person contact for how this man did contract this. We've looked at this. We've gone through very methodically through all the evidence about where he was, he's a maintenance worker, what rooms he was in. There is absolutely no evidence that this is a border leak. Obviously, something has happened, and we will continue to chase that down. But I think one of the things that we can't rush to and say this is the border leaking, we've had in the 8 weeks alone that I've been responsible for this, we've had 20,000 people through managed isolation facilities, and we've got one singular case of a worker working.
Well, you know what happened to the one singular case of the worker in Melbourne, don't you? And you know what they're worried about in Sydney this morning from the one singular worker, both of them guards, both of them in ISO facilities. It takes one. That's the problem.
But, Mike, I think what New Zealanders and Aucklanders can have some comfort from and some confidence is that his close contacts have been tested and they are negative. So I think before we kind of get too carried away and compare it to other places, that this man started displaying symptoms on the 11th. He was tested on the 13th. So the fact that it was caught early, and we have not seen his immediate contacts that have been infected with the virus. So I think that people do need to take some confidence from the fact that this is being dealt with. There is an issue and we need to fix it.
Indeed, but you don't know what the issue is, and that's the critical point. Until you know what the issue is, you don't know what it is, and when you don't know what it is, you don't know how to fix it.
No, and look, that's why we continue to look. So that's why we've retested all the staff at Ridges yesterday. We want to make doubly sure that there isn't anyone else in that chain of transmission. And if there are, we have procedures and processes for dealing with that.
Well, hold on. Just let me stop you there.
And people are contact traced.
The reason we are here is because you guys all told us this before. There are processes in place. There is testing been done. What has been proven in the last week is all of that was crap. And what you said was happening and what was happening are two completely different things.
Look, Mike, I think one of the things we have to realise, we're dealing with a virus here that is around the world.
We were dealing with a government who was saying something but not enacting it. That's what we're dealing with. There was no testing when you said there was testing.
No, and that is actually just not the case. So in terms of the managed isolation facilities, when the voluntary regime was in place, around 800 of the staff across the system in Auckland were tested.
Not enough.
It was a voluntary regime.
Exactly. Why? Because you didn't make it compulsory.
No, and it has now been made compulsory. But look, the most important thing, and the reason why we've had 40,000 people through managed isolation and we haven't had cases getting into the community, is because of things like the use of PPE in the facilities, the fact that there are good cleaning processes. Look, I think one of the things that we have to realise here, that we are dealing with a virus that we're seeing spreading around the globe.
You've got to stop making excuses for it being tricky and spreading around the globe. You made a series of promises and you haven't enacted them. Let me put this to you. The other thing you've said this week, Megan, the other thing you've said this week is that you had reluctance from staff to take tests. The unions, for God's sake, with the Labor Party, are saying that's simply not true. There are people at MPI who were shuffled around the country with no testing.
So in terms of the reluctance of staff to take tests, the staff that I've talked to in the facilities actually were keen to get tested, and that's something that we've been working on with the Ministry of Health over a number of
And
weeks.
they're now saying they were keen, but they were pushed back. They were turned down.
Yeah, so one of the issues was that a voucher system was being used, so people were going to testing facilities in the community. Now, of course, the testing facilities in the community are much more focused on symptomatic testing, where we were wanting asymptomatic testing of staff. So one of the things and the issues we've identified, and it does need to be fixed, is actually we've got to get testing regimes into the places that much better match the shift changeovers.
Exactly, of course.
All
of this is obvious, and you're only doing this, but this is the point, Megan, you're only doing this because you were caught out yet again.
Mike. These are in place now, and across managed isolation facilities, we have 97% of staff tested
Megan,
now.
they're in place because you were caught out. You're acting retrospectively. Thelma and Louise taught you nothing.
Look, Mike, one of the things I think that we need to kind of think about how our managed isolation facilities are working. These are some of the best in the world. This has not got out into the community because someone just wandered out or because someone didn't have, returnee didn't have their testing.
You don't know that.
Think back to where, no,
you don't know that because if you knew that, you knew how it came out, and you don't know how it came out, so you can't say that.
Mike, I can tell you that in the period of time since we've been operating this, people have not been released from managed isolation and quarantine facilities without returning a negative COVID test.
Have you seen the photos that I've been seeing? Have you seen the photos I've been getting with in the hotel facilities? There's no distancing, there's no mask, there's no PPE. It's party time. It's a joke.
No, it is not party time, and it is not a joke.
Have you seen the photos?
I think I have seen the photos that you are referring to.
And they don't alarm you?
No, they don't alarm me because there is distancing. That is not an area where people would be required to wear masks. Since we've had this
that's the nutshell. That's the nutshell. Your hot-cold zone doesn't work. Why don't you stick everyone in a room? They stay in a room for 14 days like they do in Australia, military in the corridor, beginning, middle and end.
No, that is simply not the case, Mike. I want you to reflect.
I know it's not the case. I'm asking why isn't it the case?
So when people think about what a close contact is, and we've all been told this by the Ministry of Health over the last couple of months, it is about how close you are to someone for the amount of time that you are with someone. The photos that I've seen certainly don't suggest that that it is just obviously a very fleeting walking past someone. But what people have to have confidence in is the fact that we have had 40,000 people through our managed isolation and quarantine facilities. These are systems that have been keeping COVID out. We now have a case of a single worker in a hotel that has contracted the virus, and we're doing everything we can to track down how that happened, but also to keep him safe and to make sure that his work colleagues are safe so that we can keep New Zealanders safe.
Quick word on the aircrew. Are you going to change that? That's as weak as well.
So aircrew isn't obviously something that I'm responsible for, but it's certainly something as a government that the Minister of Health has been talking about that we need to continually look at all of the systems. Bear in mind, we're dealing with a global pandemic. There is no playbook for this. We need to continually adjust settings as we go.